Hello, everyone. I'm Jacqueline Maddison. Welcome to the Beverly Hills Magazine podcast. We are here today with a very special guest, Sanford Climan. He is president of Entertainment Media Ventures, Inc., which is active in media investment and strategic advisory work with a particular focus on disruptive technologies and entities that are currently impacting the traditional boundaries of business, media, and entertainment. He's an investor, a producer, and considered a media visionary. Throughout his career, Mr. Climan has held senior management positions in the media and entertainment industry. Mr. Climan served as a corporate executive vice president and president of worldwide business development at Universal Studios, where Mr. Climan oversaw corporate international strategy, strategic marketing, and 5 studio operating divisions. Mr. Climan was also the founding head of the corporate practice at Creative Artists Agency. While at CAA, Mr. Climan was part of the senior management team for 12 years, representing talent including Robert De Niro, Robert Redford, Kevin Costner, Danny DeVito, Michael Mann, as well as many, many prominent film and television production companies. So I'm very excited to welcome him to the show, and I'm so glad you are here to enjoy. Mr. Sandy Climan, welcome to the Beverly Hills Magazine podcast. I'm so excited to have you on the show. How are you this morning?
I am excited to be here with you. I love the magazine. I love Beverly Hills, and I am just looking forward to spending some time with you.
Likewise. Thank you so much. So you are an active investor, an advisor, you to venture capital firms, early stage companies in media, technology, healthcare. You are a producer of The Aviator, which was directed by Martin Scorsese and starring Leonardo DiCaprio. You have been awarded a British Academy Award, a Golden Globe Award, plus the Ellis Island Medal of Honor. You are an extremely accomplished man. I want to congratulate you on all of your success.
You're very sweet to do that. It takes an entire army of people who you work with to get any of that done. Some of those are recognized, some of those are not formally recognized. Let me take the opportunity to recognize that none of this happens on your own. And I have been blessed with people beginning in the early parts of my life that have allowed me to learn from them, to learn with them, to collaborate with them. And it's a long and winding road, but it's been an exciting one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we just want to shine light on your success journey and hopefully gain some pearls of wisdom that you've gained along the way. Now, what initially inspired you to get into the movie making business or into the entertainment space? Was it a choice you made or sort of, as they say, fate?
Well,
Tell us a little bit about that path.
Well, I grew up in the Bronx, and neither parent went to college. So we had a huge amount of enthusiasm for education, but we also had no resources. So the only way I got to travel the world was through books, movies, and television. And it was the storytelling, it was the magic of being in stories of human life, locations, history. And as I started in science, I started actually in neurosciences, in neurobiology. And that's kind of what gets you out of the Bronx. So when I was in junior high school, I got a letter as I was accepted to Bronx High School of Science that said you have to do a directed research project. I thought that was right then. I was about age 14. It was actually junior year. And I got on the bus. My mother was a ward clerk at Jacobi Hospital in the Bronx Municipal Hospital System, which was a city hospital affiliated with Albert Einstein College of Medicine. And I took the number 9 bus down Eastchester Road, walked into the sciences building at Einstein, no security back then, walked up to the second floor and into the offices of a bearded, bespectacled, pipe-smoking Professor William T. Norton. And I said to him, "Do you mind if I stay?" And for reasons I'm not sure I understand, he said yes. And I spent 6 years in his lab, That and graduating first in your class at Bronx Science is a ticket out of the Bronx. I didn't have the resources to visit any of the colleges I applied to. I knew that Harvard was a good school, got into all the schools, went to Harvard as a chemistry major, and then fortunately, found my joy was on the Harvard Lampoon, the humor magazine. I took the bulk of my non-chemistry and science courses in art history, then applied to the Harvard School of Public Health as the fourth year I was there, somehow got in, combined that with the business school, and having a health background, having a humanities background, I basically said, what I really love to do is movies and television, storytelling. And I had never been west of West Virginia, where there was the National Youth Science Camp I went to in my senior year of high school. I got on a plane, I went to California for the first time, and I said, if I can get somebody to pay me to watch movies and television, that would be okay. I started not as a secretary, but as a second secretary in an independent foreign distributor of the Guinness Film Group, which was one of the early days mini major studios that actually made films that were distributed by the majors.
Wow, fantastic. So that was an interesting turn of events. Now, your current business is entertainment media ventures. Fast forward, obviously, now to the future. So, what is your current business mission?
Well, there are two. There's the business mission, and there's the how do I give back mission, and they're
Mhm.
both important, and they actually have always tied together. The business mission is firstly, I love learning about the world. And whether I was at MGM, Creative Artists Agency, Universal, I was always considered one of, if not the bridge between Silicon Valley and Hollywood, the corporate world and Hollywood. And I was what fascinated me about the entertainment business, whether it was representing talent like Robert De Niro, Robert Redford, Kevin Costner, Danny DeVito, directors like Michael Mann helping to run CAA, or putting projects together as a studio executive or as an independent producer at the David Gerber Company, which was a dominant TV company. Um, there was a spirit of just creating things that were new, that would impact people. And in the early 1990s, there was that moment of early convergence, but not, it was almost a false convergence between CD-ROMs and entertainment. And all of a sudden, for the first time, Silicon Valley showed up in Hollywood.
Mm.
And of course, they showed up on our doorstep at CAA. And I started to work with venture-backed companies and make investments in venture funds and work with venture funds because the sense of creativity of the entrepreneur building a business from scratch, an early stage company, companies that were transformative, was the same spirit, emotion, engagement of actors, directors, writers, people who worked around the creative industry. Both are creative industries. And I started to immerse myself in that world. And it took another 10 or 20 years, actually, for the worlds to truly converge, which is where we are now, which, as you know, and now AI puts an entirely different spotlight on the convergence of telecommunications, technology, and entertainment. And the reason we are having this talk this way on Zoom, in a podcast, potentially on YouTube, also in Beverly Hills Magazine, is because of those decades of these worlds coming together. Now, on the social side, I really have two ways to give back. So one way is cross-cultural storytelling. News, social media, I think they fail us. I mean, I think that the sense of Walter Cronkite and, the great journalists, Edward R. Murrow, Chet Huntley and David Brinkley, John Chancellor, that I grew up with, we don't have any voices that are not what I would consider either partisan or editorially slanted towards an economic goal in terms of talking about the world and news and everything else. And to me, the way that people actually will have peace, they will see that our cultures all should mix together, that we should actually have values and respect and all of the sort of good qualities that have been somewhat overrun by bad qualities from, the extremes now taking center stage with the loudest voice is storytelling. And last night I had dinner with my friend Nasser Water. Nasser is Lebanese. He does business here in Southern California and all around the world, including the Middle East. It is. We talked about Nadine Labaki, who is the brilliant Lebanese filmmaker. And I was on a panel at the Dubai International Film Festival many years ago, and the only film that I was the only Westerner there, probably because my friend Abdul Hamid Juma, who invited me, felt that I had flown halfway around the world. I should do something. So irrationally, he
Yeah.
put me on a panel with the heads of distribution or exhibition for Kuwait, Egypt, and the UAE. The only film all three of them talked about that year was Caramel. And I've given more copies of Caramel in DVD, which is a format many people listening to this podcast may not even be familiar with. But it's 4 women in a Beirut beauty shop. They could be 4 women anywhere in the world, but it is essentially about Lebanon and Beirut. But the struggles they have with relationships, with families, with themselves, these are universal struggles. And that is the power of storytelling. From all over the world, we see that people essentially are the same.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's really what entertainment is in a sense we have a voyeurism in us all, where we like to watch other people in their life journey and learn from them and empathize with their struggles, their pains, and I mean it's powerful. I think it's the most powerful and impactful medium that exists, obviously. That can change people's hearts, minds, and ultimately their lives. You know,
And and when you look at Beverly Hills Magazine, or even just Beverly Hills, it's a globally known gathering place. And anytime you have that ability to convene or influence, and why I'm glad we're on this podcast, we should just remind people that they should be curious. Americans should not just land in a country and be a tourist. They should know the culture. They should meet the people. They should embrace the diversity and the goodness in the world. Now, the other way I have to give back, which we're working on through an educational venture called Aptitude, is job creation. And I think that part of the goal we all should have is not just to create employment, but to create meaningful employment. Because if people have jobs where they are engaged, they can provide for their family, they inspire their family, they can start families. That is the American dream. It's the world dream. And without that, we will have disharmony and anger, and with prosperity and a sense that we all need to share in the creation of that prosperity for all, that also promotes peace.
absolutely. I think
It promotes a healthy engagement on a community, on a regional, on a national, and on a global level.
that's fantastic. What a tremendous initiative, and I agree 100%. For me, I've started it's called the God Foundation, and what we do is we support orphanages and just really the poor and needy, literally people who are starving in other countries and other parts of the world. And so that's what we do. But it's not, not only about us achieving our dreams and our goals, but it's definitely about making the world a better place for all of us and sharing, as you say, in that responsibility to do so.
But I'm also sure you've had this wonderful experience. So um, many years ago, Wolfgang and Galila Puck were at the Christmas holiday launching a program at an orphanage in Addis Ababa, because Galila is Ethiopian. And it was a culinary program. These young people quite young, would be learning hospitality. They would rotate through the various, hotel and restaurant companies throughout the world. And you went there and you saw these young people, and their eyes sparkled, and they were so hungry to learn. And all they wanted to do was to soak up every bit of education and opportunity. And to me, we need to inculcate that excitement about education everywhere in the world.
Right.
It should not be taken for granted. It levels the playing field. It creates the future that we all want. And it is just the most marvelous thing to see young people who are so excited about what lies ahead.
Absolutely. So tell me, Sandy, what has been sort of the most challenging experience that you've endured in your career, your success journey that you've overcome? You know, for some people it's financial setbacks, for others it's maybe relationship. I really want to kind of hone in on some of your personal experiences on your in your life journey.
Well, when I got my first job at MGM, I was the secretary, a second secretary, not even the first secretary at Producer Sales Organization, and which was fantastic. I mean, I would get, remember, this is before cell phones, this is before faxes, you'd be sending telexes.
Wow.
My boss would come in and he would hand me this large rubber kind of sheet that was a dictaphone thing he had used at home. You'd get an ear infection typing out what today would be a line on email, and then you would cut up the sheets that you had typed, and you would drop these slivers of notes all over people's desks as if this was how you communicated. And yeah, I think that for me, I came to this town not knowing anyone. And I grew up relatively shy. And again, part of life which we need more of is to know how to work with others, how to engage on a social level. And it's not a social level, it's how to be a good colleague. And when I went to MGM eventually, which was the only way I could actually continue eating, because of, I remember at PSO, he said, most of the people who work for me are women who don't have to pay for rent. How will you afford to live? To which I said, I'll do fine.
Wow.
And I would sell records and buy dollar, chicken at Kentucky Fried Chicken from the Bruin magazine, which friends of mine at UCLA would give me. And when I went to MGM, I thought, oh, great, I could be here for the rest of my career. And what I didn't realize then, and it's probably even more so today, was that there were some stable companies and some companies that continually had regime changes. MGM, had I gone to Warner Brothers and I worked hard, I might have been there for the rest of my career. But MGM kept shifting leadership, and eventually you were not part of the team. The hard part was moving from distribution to production. That required a complete shift of the company's view of you. I remember, I started in distribution with a man named Jack Gordon, who I love. And he gave me an opportunity. It was a small company. We did not own United Artists at the time. We distributed through them, but we had not, Kirk Kerkorian had not yet merged the two companies by acquiring UA. And, I ran pay TV because there was just Jack and me. And I worked in international, and it was quite wonderful. But what I really wanted to do was to work in production. And eventually the head of production, may rest in peace, David Chasman, saw in me, he hired me as his assistant, which was not a typing assistant. That was actually a real executive job.
Oh.
And I basically got to sit in his office and watch how decisions were made. And it was a very hard transition because the creative community likes to think of itself as completely insular. And there's some kind of a special voodoo that they have that the average person doesn't. And I remember sitting at lunch with the head of business affairs for all of MGM, a great man named Frank Davis. And people did not know I had made the transition to production because it was done quietly. And he looked at me because he knew and said, how do you go from distribution to production? And we were eating chicken soup. And I said, it's the difference between bullion and bullion, gold. And I showed up in the screening room for what in those days pre-video were the rushes, the looking at the film that was actually shot the day before by the directors working on the films we were on. And there was complete silence because I was in the room. And all of the production executives just didn't talk because they didn't know why I was there. They were polite because I was their friend. And finally, the head of production came in and said, congratulations. And two things happened. One is you saw their bodies shift because it was like, why are you here? And then their bodies shifted like, are you going to be a problem for me? And, the sense of overcoming those challenges and then basically navigating, I had no resources. So navigating a career that continued as opposed to someone once said, Columbus was right except for Hollywood. In Hollywood, the world is flat and people fall off the edge. And
Wow.
the trick
Yeah.
was not to fall off the edge.
Interesting. What has been the most rewarding experience, but not just experience? Yeah, I suppose the most personally fulfilling aspect of what you do or have done in the past.
It's never changed. The most fulfilling thing the thing I get the greatest joy from
Mm.
is to help people. I mean, there are people who grow up thinking that they should have a beret and that they can make the movies, that they can, singularly have a vision and, bring that vision forward. And I think that's great. And some of those people are the Steven Spielbergs, Martin Scorsese's, Michael Mann's, the actors we talked about,
Right.
and they are extraordinary. And if you don't think that it's a gift, or, again, I think it can be learned and made better, but for many of them, it truly is a gift. They see things differently than others. I remember I worked with Robert Redford on the first film was the Milagro Beanfield War, and most people haven't seen that film. And it was the first film that he directed after Ordinary People, which won the Academy Award. And he was under tremendous pressure. It was going significantly over budget. And essentially, it felt like a European film. And he was being criticized in the press. And again, we don't have the sort of minute to minute criticism, but that we have today and the
Right.
microscope that people live in. But I watched how he, took what from a very long novel. The first cut of the film, it was a film about a fight for water rights in New Mexico in Santa Fe. The film he delivered is a fable about how an old man and an angel save a town. And they were entirely different movies to me. And the genius was to know that you could take this footage and craft it into something quite different that would be relevant to the audience.
Right.
And for those that haven't seen the film, I highly recommend it. It's not an often seen film, but it's a beautiful, beautiful film. And it is exceptional in its humanity and its humor.
Fantastic. And I have to agree with you that some of our gifts are just really inborn talents given from, the grace of God. I literally believe many of us are created to do certain things. And that's why some are just absolutely extraordinary in what they do because they were born to do it.
Well, my goal is to help people, is to bring
Mm,
people together who otherwise would not have met.
I love
And
that.
look, I've been blessed to be a member and advisor of the World Economic Forum for 28 years, TED, the FII in Saudi Arabia, many gatherings, and I've been to places, I've hosted heads of state. Everyone has two businesses, their own business and show business, so it opens doors that otherwise would not be there.
Hmm.
And if in fact you look at life from the standpoint of not your own point of view, but the people that you're working with, and you understand what is important to them, and if you can help them, all things are possible. And my greatest joy is in the lives that in some small way, and maybe sometimes in a large way, that you touch, their careers go forward, you give them advice. Sometimes it's business, sometimes it's just how they see themselves, issues with their family, choices they have to make. Sometimes just being there to listen to them and understand them is, to me, more important than a deal or a transaction. Many people go through life on a transactional basis. I probably would be richer and more successful on an economic basis if I were more transactional. I've never looked at life transactionally. Everything is about a handshake, a hug, a long-term relationship.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I agree with you because when it's all said and done, we take none of the dollars we've earned with us, but we take the love in our heart and we take the memories of the relationships that we've formed and we leave the legacy of the butterfly effect of our positive actions and our good deeds in the lives of others, like what you're saying. So in a way, you're an angel of sorts to
I'm
people.
definitely not an angel, but I will say that, they say that you are, you're fine, you're alive as long as the last person who remembers you is alive.
Mm,
And I think we all should strive to touch as many people in a positive way as we possibly can,
yeah,
because that's the true legacy. And at the end of the day, what is the measure of what you've done? The measure of what you've done is the positive footprints everywhere that you can be.
exactly. And I believe that too. So I want to thank you so much. I know this has been short and sweet. We could talk for hours, I'm sure. I'd love to follow up with a coffee date or
Well,
lunch,
you
whatever.
are a gifted writer, you are a gifted storyteller. We will have many opportunities, not just to share tales of business or tales of your life, but we will talk about future things, about the stories that need to be told and will be told.
Oh, I love it. I'm excited to have that conversation with you. Because the possibilities are limitless and there's so much opportunity right now and the world really needs a voice into the heart of the world that's going to change it for the good of everybody.
Let us just make sure that at any age that we put our arms around our young people
Mm.
and we basically remind them that every moment they have many choices, and the choices that they make can change lives for the better.
Wow, let that be a prayer from your mouth to God's ears and we just say amen. Let it be done, Lord. That's beautiful. Sandy, I want to thank you so much for your time. I congratulate you on all your success in life and in business, and thank you for all that you've done for the world and for others. And I'll look forward to seeing you very soon.
Jacqueline, we will catch up soon, and you have a good weekend ahead, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Likewise. God bless you, and thank you, everyone, and we'll see you in the next issue.
Thank you.
Bye.